Welcome to Awakening the Feminine Within podcast. I am your host, Miriam Bolcher. I'm a luxury portrait photographer as well as a feminine energy business and lifestyle coach. Now, you might be wondering, what is feminine energy and why awakening the feminine within? Now, feminine energy is an incredible tool that has totally transformed my life completely from 180 to being hustling, frustrated, thinking that I had to work 60, 80 hours a week in order to make money and have the life that I wanted to have. And only finding out that I was completely mistaken and that I actually had to relax, learn to let go, learn to trust, learn how to love myself unconditionally, believe in myself unconditionally, and really, ultimately, to have a hands-off approach and to receive everything that I had ever wanted, including a better life for my kids, more money, more sustainable business. And so that is why this podcast is here. And you are going to learn all about everything that I just mentioned, as well as how to, like the podcast name says, awaken the feminine within you so that you can achieve peace, joy, contentment, have a better marriage, have a better sex life, have more confidence, enjoy, make more money, all the things. You've come to the right place. I cannot wait for you to listen to this podcast, and let's get started. Welcome to today's podcast episode. I firstly want to tell you that this podcast is truly a birth of just the passion that has been inside of my mind and has transformed my life. If you are a follower of me on Facebook or we're friends on Facebook, I have been talking a ton in the last year and a half, especially about why hustling is no good, why systems are no good, why women in general are just not meant to work in order to have the life that they want to have. And so finally, in the midst of the conversations that I have in day-to-day living, I thought, you know what, there's too much information for me to share. If I were to really share all the content that I truly want to share, I would have to post probably at least 10 to 20 times a day. And for someone like me who, in this healing my feminine journey, has really made it a priority to, number one, say no to what doesn't serve me, and also number two, to really keep boundaries and make sure that I have enough time for reflection and make sure that I am truly living in the present. That's part of nervous system regulation, is being able to really live in the moment and absorb what it is super important that I do not spend a lot of time online. And so I thought, what better way could I get out the information that is in my head all the time? And I thought, you know what, the podcast is going to be the best way to do this. And so I'm so thrilled that you are here. This is not going to be a long intro episode, as we say, because I want you to jump into the amazing episodes that we have already uploaded for the launch of this podcast. And there are amazing guests that I have coming on this podcast, and I cannot wait for you to get into that information. But first and foremost, I wanted to tell you why feminine energy and why it's so important to me and why I want to share this with you. And I hope that you will subscribe to this podcast to really start this journey and to really dive into this feminine energy, because it's not what people, I think it is. And if you haven't heard of it, this next episode with Trina Peterson is going to dive into that a little bit more. So I'm not going to rehash that information here. But feminine energy, in essence, is, in very, very simple terms, so the definition, going from working and hustling and following a societal formula or a formula to living one's life, to having it just come to you. That is what I experienced in the last year and a half to 2 years, and it has flipped my life on its head in the best way possible. And it has truly ignited my soul on another level. And that's the best, most powerful way that I can say that, because I went from thinking I was doing the right thing, going to networking events 6 times a week. I mean, I was like, I'll do whatever it takes to build my business, right? Only to realize that I was sacrificing precious time with my children who were young. I won't get that time back. And they were seeing a mom that was working all the time in order to get money. And I'm like, well, that's not right, because number one, that doesn't need to happen. And number two, it's not right for them to see that example, because I don't want them to grow up thinking that that's what they have to do. And after increasing my business and making multi-six figures, almost reaching $500,000, I finally hit a wall, and I was like, how am I supposed to make more money when I'm already maxed out? I'm still burnt out, right? I mean, I was getting better. I wasn't working as much. And finally, I realized that I kept getting pushed in this direction of feminine energy. And that is what led to this podcast, what led to me fully discovering that I didn't need to work so much in order to make the same amount of money. And as you will see and discover on this podcast journey, I'm on a journey to make 7 figures. And I know that that's going to be happening in the next year and a half. And so I'm excited for you to be a part of that discussion. And I will totally be sharing with you what I learned in that process and this is a huge part of it. What I've gone through in the last 6 to 8 to 12 months has been critical in getting to that 7-figure journey. And feminine energy has been a huge portion of that, because in order to really, truly understand what lit me up, that wasn't going to feel like work, that was really going to help my clients, whether in my photography business and my coaching business, I had to understand myself more. And feminine energy pushes you in that direction. Feminine energy forces you to really look at yourself without judgment. There's nothing holding you back anymore. There's no whether you have any inherited beliefs about that your parents gave you that you don't even realize come from your parents, or any societal or childhood friend beliefs that have just been lingering on in your mind, like, oh, you can't do this because of X, or oh, you can't do this because of XYZ. Feminine energy forces you to stand in front of yourself without any of those belief systems, and for you to say, well, what do I want to see? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be? Who do I want to serve? And what makes me me? So it forces you to come to yourself in a way that any other kind of personal development that I've seen out there doesn't get you that. It doesn't get you there. It tries to, and it'll say, okay, you know what's your passion? How can you really know what your passion is if you don't know who you are? In essence, truly in essence. Now, in adulthood, I like to explain that feminine energy is, in a way, it's kind of a rebirth of who you are as you are now. Who do you want to be as you are now, right? And what kind of life do you really want to have? What kind of life should you be living as an adult here and now? Because when you're a child, you have a pretty good understanding of, oh yeah, well, this is what I want to be. This is who I am, et cetera, et cetera. And then we grow up, and whether we have traumatic experiences or, we have an experience that we end up attaching a belief to, then that changes who we are. And then, repeat that series of events until you get to where we are now. And it's like, well, who am I? Marriage, children, business, work achievements, add in all those things. And where am I and who am I right now? And not only are you going to discover your true essence and who you are meant to be, the real authentic version of yourself, but you get to learn and discover, like a child would, what lights you up. And I mean, if that doesn't just get your gears going and make you so excited and also maybe a little scared at the same time, then I don't know what is. Because even for me, thinking about what I wanted was absolutely terrifying, because I was taught growing up that you shouldn't have, the desires were not good for you, because that led to like attachment, like physical worldly attachment to things. And I was always taught growing up that was something that was going to take you down a wrong path. It was going to take you down somewhere that made you into a bad person. And what I discovered is that totally was not true. That was only going to be the case if you end up being obsessed with it. But we're not talking about obsession. We're just talking about simplistic desire, simplistic dreams. Like, say, for example, you have a dream to pay off your debt, right? That's a desire. That's like a legitimate thing that you're craving, right? But say also you're like, okay, well, I want to pay off my debt, but I also have a lot of shopping addictions that are not really serving to me. Where do those come from? And are they getting in the way of your desire? And are those shopping addictions a true desire, or is that a Band-Aid for something else, right? So desire in its ultimate truest form comes from your soul, right? Like I wanted to buy a house. That desire to buy the house came from me wanting to help my family, wanting to have a better life for my children, wanting to have a better life for me. And it was, in a way, selfless. A lot of my desires, even the Dyson vacuum that I wanted last year, that was a desire. And I sat on it long and hard because I thought, you know what? this feels a little excessive. It feels like maybe I don't really necessarily need this. But then I thought, okay, but I know I'm going to use it more. And it felt a little risky. I was really scared when I made that purchase. We have used that vacuum more than I think I've ever used a vacuum in my life. Like it gets run and my kids use it, like everyone uses it. And only then could I see, after I made that decision, that that was a good desire that I acted on. Those things, of course, can always be returned. But what I'm trying to say here is there's an evolution in learning what your desires are. But first, feminine energy starts with, what are those? What are my desires? Like, what if I just get to sit here without judgment and listen and hear my own desires? What does that even look like? Can I have that conversation with myself without judgment, right? This aspect of feminine energy is so flipping beautiful because you get to have all these conversations with yourself without judgment. Say you don't want to work as much. You shouldn't probably be working 60, anything remotely over 40 hours a week. And even then, sometimes 40 hours can feel really overwhelming if the work is not aligned to your soul and the work feels really heavy and really burdened. And it's like, okay, well, what if I don't want that anymore? That doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that you have another desire. And it's okay to not know what that desire even is. If your desire is, I know that I have to do something else, that's it. That's your intuitive pull. Great. That is amazing. Sit with it. Have room to play. That is like feminine energy and play are so necessary to each other. It teaches us that we as women can have what we want when it's in alignment with who we are. And we also get to have fun. We also get to feel good. We also get to help others by feeling good about ourselves, by acting on our desires, and by also rediscovering ourselves and doing what lights us up. It is so necessary. And it really is an incredible chain domino reaction. I just had a coaching client who, through, a series of intuitive hits and acting on desires, sooner than she was anticipating, bought a house. And she's already seeing how it's affecting her family, how her one little decision that came from her intuition, which is, we're going to be talking about that here at a later discussion on the podcast, is how, your intuition, feminine energy, they're all linked together and they're a core part of what it means to live with contentment, peace, and joy as a woman. But she acted on her her little intuitive hits, her desires, made a decision. And all throughout the process, she could see how all those decisions had a massive domino effect, positive one, on her family. And she was like, I just can't believe how amazing my life is right now. She's not in the house yet, but how just making those decisions altered the state of not only her life, but her family life, her kids' life, even her relationship with her husband. And it's all been like amazing transformations that have just led to everyone being so much more content, so much happier. And it is so beautiful to watch and to see how when you start listening to you and who you really are in your essence, and how you listen to your desires and how you listen to your intuition and how you open yourself up to just, I can just be open. I can just have what I want come to me. I can just play and have what I need come to me. I can just relax and have money come to me. I can just play with my children and have business opportunities come out or work opportunities arise or get a raise by just doing what I intuitively and feel called to do and desire to, of course, morally speaking. You get what you want that way. You get to have what you want that way. Now, there are a lot of others out there who talk about feminine energy, but talk about it and still act in a very masculine energy way. And masculine energy is going to come into the contrast, and masculine energy in contrast to feminine energy. Feminine energy is having things come to you, receiving. Masculine energy is like giving and doing. And don't get me wrong, there is a role for masculine energy for women, of course. Men and women both have to have a balance of both. But in this context, we're really focusing on really opening up and really receiving in the feminine energy aspect of things in this podcast, because masculine energy, most women today in today's society are living almost 90% of their masculine energy. They don't know how to receive. When was the last time you were able to receive a compliment, right? Like, kind of think about that. And it's not a bad thing. This is not like, if you are someone who's like, oh yeah, I might be like rejecting compliments, rejecting when someone wants to give me money, rejecting when someone wants to help me, rejecting a friend who's like, oh, I just brought some muffins over, blah, 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 rejecting like any kind of assistance at all. That's okay. I mean, like, society has honestly trained us to be that way. And it is, again, this podcast is a reason for us to reconnect with what lights us up truly in our natural state as women, which is that feminine energy, and learning to balance out the masculine and the feminine, but really awakening that feminine and bringing her up to speed where it's not so imbalanced anymore. So ultimately, I hope that this gets you excited to jump into those podcast episodes. I know for me, when I think about who I was before I discovered really ultimately healing my wounded feminine energy and living, because in the past, the best way to explain it is I was living in my wounded masculine, and seeing who I was back then, honestly, I feel like that wasn't even me, that I was living almost a zombified version of myself compared to who I am now. And it is not sad. I don't look back and I'm not like, oh, that was really sad. But I'm like, you know what? I'm so glad that I discovered this information now. I paid a lot of money to be able to really, truly learn what I want to say, like, true feminine energy, because again, there's a lot of women talking about it, but still living their lifestyle in masculine energy. And so I really hope that this podcast will give you keys and tools and information so that you can go and implement and have more happiness, more peace, and more joy, and to be able to wake up in the morning without anxiety. I mean, honestly, like, that's healing and living your lifestyle this way will give you that. Feminine energy touches you on a cellular level. It is not just like, that is, again, energy, cellular, like, it's all like connected. And again, you can YouTube that information if you're not familiar with that. But it is like, I cannot say, but my permanent essence, my permanent being, my soul in terms of who I am now it's a foundation. I finally have a foundation. I finally know who I am, what my needs are, what I'm moving towards, how to help others. And I don't have to second guess what I'm doing. No imposter syndrome anymore. There's no imposter syndrome. There's no doubt. I mean, sure, there's going to be a little bit of fear, more so in terms of like, okay, yeah, that might seem a little bit scary to do, but there's no doubt about whether I can do it anymore. There's no anxiety. There's really just, oh my gosh, I get to have this, and I get to have this feeling, and I get to enjoy. And then there's the evolution of it, okay? So maybe there is something that I have to work on, but it never comes from a place of frustration. It never comes from a place of, oh, I'm angry or upset or anything. It's just openness. Oh, okay, there's something I have to learn here. Great. Well, let's dig into it and see what it's like to work through that. So that is my life now. I cannot wait to share more with you. I hope that you are just as excited as I am. I've probably said that too much. And let's dig into these next episodes, and definitely subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Oh, the podcast platforms I wanted to mention, because it's going to be on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google. I'm trying to think if there's any other things, but it's going to be on all the things. So if you're a visual person, go watch it on YouTube. If you are more of an audio person, want to listen to it in your car, definitely subscribe and share with your friends. That would mean the world to me. I really hope, again, that this hits your soul in exactly where you need it. And you'll find any information related to this podcast on miriambolcher.com/awakening the feminine within. That is the home base for everything here. And enjoy the podcast. Thank you so much for listening and or watching our podcast episode today on Awakening the Feminine Within. If you had a light bulb moment, or you had something that you are like, oh my gosh, this lit a fire within me, and you want to share it, or you want to hear feedback, or you want to be surrounded by like-minded women who are trying to transform their lives and work less, have a better life, then come and join our Facebook group. It is called The Intuitive Women, and we encourage you to share any kind of discussion there about your journey, about what you heard today, or to find resources, perhaps that you liked the guest speaker that we had today, or you like the information and you want to search more about them and their information. Come and join the Facebook group. We would love to have you there, and any other information that you might want to find, feminine energy, what I do, who I am, and about coaching, courses, classes, workshops, and all that good stuff. You're going to find that on miriambolcher.com/awakening the feminine within. Thanks so much. And be sure to share this with a friend, rate our podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, to like and subscribe. And if you're listening, please subscribe as well. See you on the next episode.